Formula One is changing again. But this time, even the drivers are scared. They've seen the regulations, they've run the simulations, they've sat through the briefings. And what they're seeing, it's not just different, it's unlike anything Formula One has ever done before. 2026 will bring the biggest overhaul the sport has seen in over a decade. Smaller cars, new engines, active aerodynamics, 50% of the car's power coming from the electric motors. It sounds like progress. It sounds like innovation. But behind the scenes, the paddock is uneasy. Top drivers are already warning this could ruin the racing. Engineers are baffled. Team principals are walking a tightrope. And F1 fans, they don't know whether to be excited or worried, because what's coming in 2026 isn't just a rule change, it's a reset. And if the sport gets it wrong, it might be too late to turn back. But what exactly is changing? Why are drivers speaking out now? And who stands to lose everything when the lights go out in 2026? Let's break it all down. In Formula One, change is nothing new. It's almost a tradition. Every few years, the sport hits reset. New engines, new chassis, new philosophies, and every time it happens, the ripple effects are massive. Back in 2009, F1 introduced radical aerodynamic changes, smaller wings, slick tires, and new regulations that aim to improve overtaking. Some teams, like Braun GP, got it perfect. Others collapsed almost overnight. Then came 2014, the start of the hybrid era. V6 turbo hybrid engines, complex energy recovery systems, quiet cars. The result? Mercedes dominated for nearly a decade. And in 2022, ground effect aerodynamics returned, cars with simplified topsides but powerful floor suction. The goal? Closer racing. The outcome? Red Bull cracked the code early and the gap grew again. Each of these rule changes was supposed to improve the sport. Sometimes they did. Sometimes they just reshuffled the power dynamic. But 2026, this isn't just a technical reset, it's a philosophical one. Because for the first time in F1 history, we're not just talking about how the cars look or sound, we're talking about how they drive, how they feel, and how much control the driver really has. And that's where the unease starts to creep in. So, what's all the fuss about? Let's break it down. First, the engines. In 2026, F1 will move to a new generation of power units, still V6 hybrid, but with a twist. The MGU-H is being scrapped. In its place, the electric component of the engine, the MGU-K, will be far more powerful. We're talking 50% of total power coming from the electric energy. That means teams will be relying on massive battery deployment during acceleration, and managing that energy won't be simple. And it's not just the power units that are evolving. The chassis is getting smaller and lighter. FIA targets include a 30 kilogram weight reduction and a reduction in overall car length to make racing tighter, especially on narrower circuits like Monaco or Zandvoort. Then there's the big one, active aerodynamics. The cars will feature movable wings, not just DRS, but full aero shift modes. One mode for corners, one for straights. In theory, more efficient. In practice, constantly shifting downforce and grip mid-lap, and drivers aren't thrilled. The idea is to create cars that are more sustainable, less draggy, and more overtaking friendly. But to some in the paddock, it's starting to sound a lot like Formula E with a V6. Now here's where it gets interesting, and a bit worrying. Drivers have already started speaking out, even before the final regulations were published. Max Verstappen has been the most vocal. He said repeatedly that the 2026 cars, based on simulator data, feel like a step backward. He's warned that if the sport becomes too artificial, if drivers lose connection to the car, it won't be fun anymore. Others like George Russell have hinted at similar concerns. Too much emphasis on battery management, too many variables out of the driver's hands, not enough feel. And there's a reason that's terrifying. F1 is supposed to be a driver's sport. When technology takes over, racing suffers. Imagine hitting a corner at 300 kilometers per hour, and your aero profile suddenly shifts mid-turn because the system thinks it's more efficient. That's not racing, that's managing a system. Drivers train for instinct. The 2026 rules, they demand algorithms, and that disconnect is growing louder. The FIA claims that 2026 cars will be just as fast, but many inside the sport aren't convinced. With less drag, less downforce, smaller batteries, and a heavier reliance on electric boost, lap times might drop, especially on high-speed circuits. And when that happens, guess what takes a hit? The show. Less grip means more sliding, more weight means worse acceleration. Too much electric dependency, you could see drivers having to lift and coast, conserving energy instead of pushing flat out. It's not just about speed, it's about rhythm. And if the racing rhythm changes, if drivers can't push, then F1 doesn't feel like F1 anymore. That's why this isn't just technical debate, it's a warning sign. Every major rule change has winners and losers. In 2026, the playing field resets. So who's in trouble, and who might shock us all? Red Bull could struggle. Their dominance relies heavily on current aero philosophy, ground effect, and high downforce setups. The new cars could undercut their advantage. Ferrari, they might thrive. The Scuderia's straight line efficiency has been strong, and with simplified aero, their weaknesses in cornering could become less obvious. Then there's Audi, entering in 2026 as a full factory team. With a fresh engine project and zero baggage, they could hit the ground running like Mercedes did in 2014. And don't forget the midfield. Teams like Alpine or Aston Martin, one right guess, one clever innovation could suddenly find themselves at the front. History shows, rule changes don't just shift the grid, they flip it. On one hand, the FIA is chasing something important, sustainability. 100% sustainable fuels, higher electrical efficiency, lower emissions, all good things. But are they sacrificing the racing to get there? Fans are split. Some love the idea of greener tech, others say F1 is losing its soul, turning into a showcase for eco-marketing instead of raw competition. You can hear it in the grandstands. You can see it in the comment sections. Do fans want a tech lab or a fight on wheels? That's the question the FIA is still struggling to answer, and the 2026 cars could be the test case that tells us everything. Publicly, most drivers are being diplomatic. Behind closed doors, it's another story. Simulator data leaked from several teams suggests the 2026 cars will feel weird. Not slow, but unpredictable. Corners feel different. Braking zones are shorter. Energy deployment is harder to judge. Verstappen has openly said, "This isn't the F1 I signed up for." Other drivers have admitted, off the record, that the new cars are not fun to drive. There's a growing sense that the cars might become too artificial, that the balance between driver and machine is tipping too far toward the machine. And that silence from the rest of the grid, it speaks volumes, because what's happening in Formula One right now isn't just about regulations or performance tweaks. This is about the soul of the sport. For decades, Formula One has balanced on a knife's edge, a constant tension between raw racing and technological innovation. That's always been the magic formula: the fastest cars, the bravest drivers, the sharpest minds. But with 2026 on the horizon, that balance looks like it's about to break. The FIA says it wants the sport to be more sustainable, more efficient, more future-proof. And on paper, that makes sense. The world is changing, emissions matter, innovation matters. But here's the problem: Formula One is starting to feel less like racing and more like a laboratory. Fans didn't fall in love with the sport because of battery deployment curves or sustainable fuels. They fell in love with it because of the sound, the speed, the chaos, because of drivers like Senna, who drove with heart, because of moments like Häkkinen's pass on Schumacher at Spa, because of fights that felt human, emotional, instinctive, and unpredictable. But now, we're entering an era where the systems are making the decisions, where drivers are managing energy instead of chasing lap times, where overtakes are designed into the software, not earned in battle. And this shift, it's not just affecting the racing, it's affecting the people behind the wheel. When Max Verstappen says, "This isn't the F1 I fell in love with," it's not just frustration, it's fear. Fear that the machines are getting smarter than the humans. Fear that driver instinct is being replaced by regulation. Because here's what's really at stake. If the car is driving itself, and then who's the star of the show? Is it the driver, or is it the code? F1 is slowly creeping toward that question, and it hasn't answered it yet. The 2026 rule changes are meant to modernize the sport, but the unintended consequence could be the erasure of the very thing that made F1 matter in the first place: the human struggle at 200 miles per hour. The danger, the mistakes, the brilliance. All of it could be replaced by efficiency, balance, and sustainability. Those aren't bad things, but they're not why millions of fans wake up at 2 a.m. to watch a Grand Prix. So here's the harsh truth. If Formula One becomes too perfect, too managed, too sterile, it stops being Formula One. And that's what drivers are feeling, even if they're not all saying it out loud. They're staring down a future where the cars are cleaner, greener, but maybe not better. Where lap time comes from software updates, not bravery. And where the driver becomes just another part of the system, instead of the reason we all tune in. This is the identity crisis no one in power wants to admit. Because once you cross that line, once you turn racing into engineering, it's almost impossible to go back. The 2026 Formula One rulebook is bold, it's innovative, it's ambitious, but it's also risky. Because when the drivers, the people who live, breathe, and risk everything in these machines, start getting nervous, maybe it's time to listen. Maybe it's time to ask if F1 is chasing the right kind of future. One thing's for sure, the next era of Formula 1 will look different. It will sound different, and if the sport isn't careful, it might feel different too, and not in a good way.